You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to the Ballin in the Six podcast, your Niagara source for all NBA news, rumors, season previews, playoff discussions, and in-depth analysis from Chicco Nacion of the Scores basketball division within the heart of the Six, Toronto, Ontario. Here are your hosts, Brandon Caputo and Chicco Nacion.
Hello once again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of the Ballin in the Six podcast, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your October 20th, 2020 edition, your source North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here in a beautiful Niagara region. Follow us on social media for updates, giveaways, and sponsored promo codes each month by following us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. Listen to us on our main platform, which is Spreaker.com, and the free Spreaker app by searching the Armchair GMs. As well, we're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer by searching up the Armchair GM Sports Network. And lastly, our beautiful user-friendly website, armchairgmsports.com, for all things regarding our network, including articles, podcast episodes, sponsors, and contributors. Everything's on there for you guys. Wherever is most convenient for you to listen to us, please give us a like and smash that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to us right now. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the Ballin in the Six podcast, Cappy. Follow me on Twitter, @Poots13 with Canadian Z. And I'm very pleased to be joined once again on the basketball portion of the network by my good friend and contributor for the Scores basketball division. He is Chicco Nacion. You can follow him on Twitter, @Chicco_N. Chicco, thanks a lot for coming back on the show and talking some NBA basketball with us.
Yeah, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, always. So, guys, what we're going to talk about today on the show is we're going to look at, Chico's just going to discuss what happened in the NBA Finals between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Miami Heat. We're also going to go over the head coaching vacancies available right now in the NBA. Chico just recently did a article that he posted up on thescore.com, so we're going to touch on that as well. We got some NBA draft news as well. Draft's coming up in November, so we're just going to kind of quickly look over what to expect from the NBA draft. But with that being said, Chico, let's start the show off today by talking about the NBA Finals that just happened. And this segment today is brought to you by Custom PPE, is Canada's leading face mask provider. Best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, built from right here in the Niagara region. Order today at customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Again, customppe.ca. So, Chico, before we talk about the finals itself, just as somebody who covers the NBA, you have to be pleased with the way that they were able to get through this entire bubble with little to no, I guess you could say, hiccups, as we've seen in other sports like the NFL or the MLB, where teams and facilities had to be shut down. You've got to be proud of the way the NBA was able to get through this pretty flawlessly and get through this entire return to play season and get their playoffs completely over with.
Yeah, it's definitely an incredible feat accomplished by Adam Silver and everyone at the NBA. Obviously, there was definitely some skepticism as to whether they could pull something like this off and do so in a safe manner, but you have to give credit for them for being able to execute such a plan, and also credit to the players for adhering to all the policies and all the rules that they had to follow. Their social distancing measures, even on the benches. They were required to wear a mask whenever they were on campus, and they did even put a hotline in place, anonymous hotline in place for players to report any infractions of the rules. So obviously they wanted to make something that was safe, and they obviously wanted to punish those who did break the rules. And then we saw that there were minor hiccups, whether it was Lou Williams when he had the incident with the Wings when he left the bubble. Or even on the campus itself, when Bruno Caboclo actually went to pick up food, and it might kind of sound harmless, but because the area where he picked up his food, where he ordered, was outside the area of the bubble, they quarantined him for, I think it was 10 days, and so they were very trying to make those rules all enforced and applied for everyone equally, and it's fantastic that they were able to do this without any major outbreak.
So the NBA, I guess you could say, is the first successful sports league to be able to come back and finish their season during a global pandemic. So I got to give the NBA 2 thumbs up. I thought that, before the sports we talked about coming back, I said that I would bet money on the NBA being the league that was going to come out of this looking the best, just the way that they had everything in place with Disney and the protocols they had in place with a legit bubble, as opposed to some of the other leagues who were still traveling around and weren't really having the same restrictions. So I had predicted that the NBA would come out of this successful and look most successful, and luckily I was right. So I got to give the NBA a lot of props for being able to get through the season and be able to give the teams a championship game, and also the fans, because obviously the TV ratings and the fans is what drove the NBA to really want to get back this season, because they would have lost a lot of money in not doing so.
Yeah, and it costs a lot for the NBA to run this thing, so it actually cost them about $180 million to be able to put what they had together in the bubble. But in doing so, they were actually able to reportedly save $1.5 billion. So, I mean, that's huge. I mean, obviously, as is the case with other professional leagues, there was a lot of lost money during the season because obviously they weren't able to have fans in attendance. But the fact that the NBA were able to do this actually saved them from losing reportedly $1.5 billion, which is, wow.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible.
Exactly. So, getting into the NBA Finals itself, Chico, and this segment is brought to you by Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, home of the best pizza and wing combos in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Call today, 905-374-4400, and carmine'spizzeria.ca. This month's promo code is Armchair Mushroom, 10% off your entire order. Call ahead, pickup, or delivery. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, way too good. So, Chico, let's talk about the NBA Finals itself. You had predicted the LA Lakers over the Miami Heat in 7 games. It went 1 game shorter than that. The Lakers took care of the Heat in 6 games. You also picked Anthony Davis to be the Finals MVP. It went to LeBron James. I mean, it could have went to either of them, to be honest, but they decided to give it to LeBron. And what were your just general thoughts on the way that this NBA Finals kind of shook out? I mean, it looked like the Lakers were taking a pretty controllable lead in the series, and the Heat were able to fight back and at least make it a respectable series, and have some at least doubt in the Lakers' mind that this wasn't going to be just a 4-0 cakewalk.
Yeah, the Lakers are obviously the favorites heading into this. I mean, it's hard to bet against LeBron James and Anthony Davis, obviously being the 2 best players in this entire series going into it. And so, yeah, the Heat definitely had their work cut out for them. It didn't help that they lost Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic in Game 1. And I think that, obviously, if you had those 2 players at full health playing throughout this entire series, it could have gone 7 easily in my books, at least, in my eyes at least. But, yeah, like the injuries didn't help as well. Lakers were getting whatever they wanted in the first 2 games, especially against that Miami zone. They just picked it apart the first 2 contests. LeBron had all the time in the world, just being able to pick out his teammates and look through the holes in the Heat defense, and they had no answer for Anthony Davis, especially with Bam Adebayo out of the lineup. So I think them getting that 2-0 lead kind of, I wouldn't say, put the Heat out of it for sure, but it definitely was a tough hole to come out of, and obviously was too much for them to overcome at the end of this. But like you said earlier, the Miami did fight back. We saw great efforts from Jimmy Butler, some legendary performances with the 40-point triple-doubles that he had in the one contest. And he, I think, was one of the only players with multiple triple-doubles in a final. So, I mean, to see Jimmy performed in both those victories at such an elite level was incredible to watch, and it does make you wonder if, Bam Adebayo was 100%, that, maybe they could have put a better challenge towards the Lakers, especially in Game 6. But at the end of the day, the best team did end up winning, and there's not much you can do if you were Miami. You fought all you could till the end.
For you, what were some of the more impressive performances of the series? Obviously, Jimmy Butler's Game 4 was legendary, Game 3, where he put up 40 points and led the Heat back. They were down 2-0 in the series at that point, and he just took the team on his back, and they won 115-104. LeBron James's 40 points in Game 5 wasn't enough as the Heat were able to win that game. But looking back in the series, is there... I guess it's a kind of a loaded question, but is that Jimmy Butler performance going to be kind of engraved in your mind, or was there another performance by just LeBron James and Anthony Davis throughout the whole series that really would stick in your mind as something that really shined through?
I would definitely probably agree with you with the performances from Jimmy Butler. I mean, the 40-point triple-double, the 35-point triple-double he had in Game 5. I mean, he had to be nearly perfect in those games in order for the Heat to avoid elimination, and he performed at such a high level. And I think there was always a lot of respect for Jimmy and his talent and what he's capable of, but I don't know if anyone thought he was capable of raising his game to that sort of level, of that historic level he performed in those two games in the finals. And I think if you're a Miami fan, you're obviously disappointed you didn't come up with the championship at the end of it all, but I think this was a valuable stage for the Miami to kind of show free agents why you should come here. Obviously, there are the rumors between them and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and beating Giannis's team in the playoffs will certainly help your case to attracting him to come to your squad when he enters free agency, if he does in 2021. But I think the fact that you saw that Heat culture, the determination they had, the intensity and the toughness they play with, that was all on display in the finals. And players definitely take note of that. And I think for sure Miami's going to become a free agent destination again in 2021 when, like I said, Giannis and a lot of other stars are going to be part of that class.
Mm-hmm. And Jimmy Butler, obviously, we know what he's gone through in his career, but I think people really started to gain a lot of respect for him on this stage and kind of knew what he was all about. Obviously, that it hasn't worked out in other places that he's been at, but I really think that he emerged this year as a leader, and I think that really showed throughout the whole league. And I think Jimmy Butler's perception in the league has kind of changed for the better because of those things that have had happened in the past with former teammates and teams and such. So, just looking at the final stats, he had 157 points in the series. The next closest on his team was Tyler Herro with 88. So, really, Jimmy Butler was one of the main reasons why they were in this series, and he was only second to LeBron James in total points scored, and it was very close. He was 7 points ahead of Anthony Davis, so obviously a great performance for the Miami Heat, and I think they got to be very proud of the way that they were able to come in there as a 5 seed and knock off some really good teams and took the LA Lakers to basically the limit there in 6 games. So from Miami's perspective, I think they got a lot to be proud of and a lot of optimism going into next season. We'll have to see how that goes. But as for the Los Angeles Lakers, Chico, coming away with the NBA championship, a lot of people said they were doing it for obviously the fallen Kobe Bryant, and there was a lot of great movement with that. Being able to get one done for the Mamba. But what were your thoughts on Anthony Davis obviously getting his first NBA title? The trade that they made with the New Orleans Pelicans seemed like it paid off. He was able to get an NBA championship. He was banged up a lot throughout the series. I don't know if that had the question in your mind of where the Lakers are going to be able to pull us out with an injured Anthony Davis. But between him and LeBron James, they carried the load, and they got the Los Angeles Lakers back on top once again, and LeBron James improving to 4-6 in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, with Anthony Davis' performances, he was definitely, like you said, banged up throughout the series. That's definitely got to play a factor in his performance later on. He definitely didn't seem completely 100% going down the stretch there. Tweaked an ankle a couple of times. I think he had hurt it in the Denver series in the previous round. But again, this is a guy who is going into his first NBA Finals, and the fact that he was able to perform on a stage like that, and the first 2 games he was flawless. 34 points in Game 1, 32 points in Game 2 on 15 of 20 shooting in that second game. There's not much more you can ask for from Anthony Davis there. But I think obviously going forward, this is definitely going to be a duo to be scared of. LeBron James and Anthony Davis. It might be a pretty top-heavy team in Los Angeles, but as they've basically proven during the playoffs, if you can get some contributions from the right role players, and it doesn't have to be much. KCP had a really solid game in that game 6, and so did Rondo. Rondo had a pretty good playoffs altogether. A little bit sloppy in the finals, but he really showed up in game 6 and kind of put the nail in the coffin on Miami in the second quarter with his 13-point spurt, I believe. And so, the Lakers obviously, it was an amazing thing for them to be able to do that in the year that we lost Kobe Bryant, and that was definitely a motivational factor for them going forward. And it's going to be interesting to see what LA does next year in terms of adding to, around LeBron, Anthony Davis, because a lot of these guys are going to be entering free agency, whether it's Caldwell Pope, Rondo, and Dwight Howard. You're going to be losing some of those key role players on your team, and it'll be interesting to see who they bring back and at what price, especially in the COVID-19 era we're in, where teams are kind of been hit hard financially.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know if there's going to be internal caps with certain teams that we've seen, which might happen in the NHL, where teams just won't even spend up to the cap, but we'll have to see how that goes. But a couple of the things I want to mention, Chico, obviously in Game 5, the Lakers had a chance to basically win that game. Danny Green misses that open three. Danny Green, being a former Toronto Raptor, won the NBA title with the Raptors last year. Just what were your thoughts on that? He was taking a lot of criticism for that, and the role players for the Lakers were taking a lot of heat for not being able to pick up the slack from LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Just what were your thoughts on that missed shot, and your thoughts on the depth of the LA Lakers, and does that concern you going forward?
With the Danny Green criticism, I think it was ridiculous. I mean, the guy and his fiance were getting death threats, and he missed the wide open shot, but this is a game at the end of it all. There's no need to bring such venom out of you and to make it so personal. This is a guy who's been a proven playoff performer before. There's a reason why he's won 3 rings on 3 different teams, part of a select group that has done that. And also, he's been able to start in all those lineups. And there was one year, I think he was with the Spurs, where I believe he set a record for threes in the finals. So, I mean, this guy is a proven playoff performer and has done it in the past. And it's a shame that, people kind of forget about that and take things so personal when, he does miss a crucial shot in such a big moment. But as for the role players going forward, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they'll be able to keep all of them intact. I mean, some of them have player options. Some of them will definitely have interest. Like Dwight Howard's already attracting interest for the Golden State Warriors, potentially. Maybe to be a starter for them. We'll have to wait and see if that's the case, if he signs with them. But they're going to lose some guys, and they're going to have to also look into the bargain bin and try to find if they can find someone who's willing to take less money to play for a contender. And I think that'll be kind of easier said than done, just because of the fact that you're going to be playing a chance to win a championship and to play alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I think there's a lot of guys, especially if you're a veteran towards the end of your career, that's going to look at that opportunity and, probably take less money for a chance at that ring.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they're able to go into this offseason and, kind of improve on that depth. Like you mentioned, they got a lot of free agents there. So did they bring some of them back? Did they go out and get, like you mentioned, some bargains? We'll have to see. But it looks like with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, like you mentioned earlier, the Lakers are going to be a force to be reckoned with once again next season in not only the Western Conference, but in all of the NBA to repeat. So we'll have to see how that goes going into the offseason. But with that being said, we're going to take our first commercial break on the show today, and we're going to come back and discuss the head coaching vacancies available in the NBA. There were 4, it's down to 3 now, so we're going to discuss with Chico his thoughts on those. So we'll be right back here on the Ballin in the 6 podcast, and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving traditional-style Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and their famous chicken wings. Winners of the Reader's Choice Diamond Award, 4 years running from Niagara this week for Best Pizza and Wings in Niagara Falls. Home of the best tray and wing combo in town for the price and quality. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery at 905-374-4400. Make sure to like them on Facebook and view their website for their menu at carmine'spizzeria.ca. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Way too good. As we all adjust to this new world that we're living in today, masks are now mandatory, and Niagara's own Custom PPE is Canada's leading face mask provider. Visit them online at customppe.ca and choose between several mask options with different colors and sizes. Add your organization, company, or team logo so you make your face masks unique. Available to purchase online 24/7 at customppe.ca and shipped within 1 week. They have the best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, and no order is too big or too small. Also offering custom floor stickers as well as face and counter shields for your business or workplace. Visit customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your custom or blank face mask today. Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider. Attention job seekers, if you are currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, directly across from the Camisos Plaza. Their free services include resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and all their services are currently provided by appointment only. So give them a call at 905-358-0021 or visit their website at ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Ballin in the Six podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Brandon Caputo and Chicco Nacion back with you here, and this segment today is brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Center, helping job seekers find work with their free counseling services and professionals. 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, across from Camisos Plaza. Book your appointment today, 905-358-0021 or ehc.on.ca. Chico, let's take a look at your latest article on thescore.com. So I'm going to plug that for you. It was written by you and one of your colleagues, John Chick. You guys were ranking the 4 NBA head coaching vacancies. It's now down to 3 as of a couple hours ago of us recording this episode. So the Indiana Pacers, you might as well talk about that first, have a new head coach, and it has some ties to the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, the Pacers have hired Nate Bjorkgren, who was an assistant on Nurse's staff for the past couple of seasons. Interesting hire for Indiana. They kind of went outside the box here and opted to go with a fresh face as opposed to a veteran guy. And this is a team that's hovering around the 4th, 5th seed in the East the past couple of seasons. They've got a really solid team in place when you look at Malcolm Brogdon and Victor Oladipo in that backcourt, as well as Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner in the front court. TJ Warren had a breakthrough year, so it's a pretty good squad that you're inheriting. Really good defensive team as well. And Nate Bjorkgren has a similar path, I would say, with Nick Nurse. He's definitely been well traveled. He's paid his dues in the G League, back when it was the D League. Was an assistant with Nurse there for about 4 years, and then he had different kind of head coaching stops in the D League, and had great success each step of the way. Went to the Phoenix Suns for a couple of years to serve an assistant before joining the Raptors staff a couple of years ago. So definitely an interesting hire, definitely outside the box, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what Nate does with that team, because he did a really good job while he was in Toronto with the Raptors.
Mm-hmm. And the Pacers lost in the first round of the return-to-play format in the playoffs to the Miami Heat, a 4-5 matchup there. So the Pacers getting themselves a new head coach, as well as these other three teams, Chico. Let's quickly go over what you and your colleague John Chick had ranked. You had ranked the Houston Rockets at number 4, the Pacers at number 3, who now have a head coach, the New Orleans Pelicans at number 2, and the Oklahoma City Thunder. What led you guys to come to that decision for the rankings that you did come up with on this article?
I think if you're looking for a more long-term view of things, the Thunder and the Pelicans definitely have really high appeal, especially if you look at the draft picks and the core pieces they have in place. The Pelicans, obviously, with Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, the most improved player this year. Having those two pieces along with the picks that they got in the Anthony Davis deal definitely gives them something to build on going forward. And they also do have a solid point guard in Lonzo Ball had a pretty solid year for them. Drew Holiday is probably one of the best two-way guards in the league. Not too sure if Holiday might be on the move this year. There have been rumors regarding him, including last season, but as of now, he's still with the team. So you definitely do have a solid group in place that can challenge for a playoff spot next year. But there was a lot of struggles for them defensively, as good as they were offensively. And so whoever does have to come in, they're going to have to make that a focal point. And J.J. Redick actually spoke on recently about kind of like the lack of professionalism that the team had within the bubble. So maybe some maturity as well. And so whoever does step into that next role is going to have to kind of hold the players accountable and establish that culture from the get-go before they're able to move forward. And in terms of the Thunder, I mean, we saw the trades that Sam Presti pulled off last offseason with Russell Westbrook and Paul George. They have 13 first-round picks and 3 sets of pick swap options over the next 7 drafts, which is just absolutely insane. This is a team that obviously surprised last year. They finished 5th in the West. Chris Paul had a really good year and was also kind of that mentor for Canadian Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And Luguentz Dort was an undrafted guard that made his way into the starting lineup, and he had a breakthrough playoff performance with his defense on James Harden. And so that's going to be a team that I think it's kind of assumed that they're going to start trading guys like Chris Paul and some of those vets and try to acquire more assets. But if they do happen to keep this team together, which is kind of unlikely at this point, they're definitely a playoff team in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because you have that many assets and you have the ability to gain more assets. So, I mean, when you have that much flexibility and you have, you can trade some of those picks for players down the road, and they just there's a lot of things that can happen with that, and they have a lot of options. A lot of good things can come from Oklahoma City being able to have that many assets. Looking at it on the surface, a lot of people would probably say that the Houston Rockets would be the best available coaching vacancy, but I mean they with guys like James Harden and Russell Westbrook, but it seems like on the bottom half of that there really isn't a lot of future going forward with the Rockets, and they're kind of in a win now scenario as opposed to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have a very nice long-term plan ahead of them.
Yeah, like Oklahoma City, you're definitely going to get some patience over there and some leeway. A lot of the emphasis ideally is going to be on someone that's really good at developing players, because you're going to have so much young guys being injected into that rotation over the next few years. It doesn't seem like they're going to part with any of those picks to kind of add another piece, hence the reason why Billy Donovan reportedly chose to leave and go elsewhere as opposed to kind of staying back for the full rebuild with the Thunder. But going back to the Houston Rockets, they have James Harden and Russell Westbrook, but now without a head coach and now with Daryl Morey now gone, there could be some change in Houston. And there could be a drastic change in terms of trading either one of those two and doing a complete overhaul. Their owner, Tillman Fertitta, has kind of been known as being a little cheap, and so this might be an opportunity for him to kind of cut costs, especially in the pandemic we're in right now. And that could see both James Harden and Russell Westbrook possibly being traded if he does choose to go to that route. But Yeah, if they do stay, obviously they are in a win now situation. You have two pretty solid guards. I'm not too sure, how appealing the situation is because there's such a little bit of uncertainty as to what's going on there in Houston right now.
Yeah, and like you mentioned in the article, Westbrook and Harden, both 31 years old, are owed a combined $264 million over the next 3 seasons. So, like you mentioned about the owner wanting to cut cost, right there would be the red flag for you to say, these two guys are owed a significant amount of money the next 3 years. So do they decide to move on from them? Do they not? It's a discussion that only the ownership would know about. But if they are going to go that route, you would have to point to one or maybe even both, like you mentioned, being gone and having a whole new outlook on what the Houston Rockets roster would look like.
Yeah, and I think we're in such an uncertain era right now with the pandemic and how it's affected a lot of teams financially. And they might not be willing to spend as many dollars in free agency as they probably would have been in years past. There's not a lot of teams actually with much cap space to start off with, so I'm sure free agency will be less busy anyways. But I mean, I expect the trade market to be pretty crazy this year, especially with so many guys, possibly being trade chips, expiring deals. Or if teams just don't think they're going to be in the running for a 2021 free agents, possibly looking to kind of acquire that star beforehand as opposed to waiting for that vaunted free agent class.
And lastly, before we take our last commercial break, do you see something happening as far as the NBA, kind of like we saw with the NHL with their free agency, where guys will take a 1-year deal just to kind of see what the market's going to be like, and what the world's going to look like come 2021? Maybe they realize that they can't get the money that they would be able to get in a normal season without a pandemic going on and cost cutting and things like that. Do you see guys, taking 1-year deals as possibly being an option and kind of being a common occurrence this offseason?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen a lot, especially with not so much about the pandemic that we're in right now, but more so because of the free agent class. I mean, there are guys, Giannis, LeBron James, Victor Oladipo. There are a ton of names that are Kawhi Leonard and Paul George possibly as well. There are a ton of names that are going to be up there that are worth a max deal and that are worth the money. And so I think a lot of teams, if they're going to have the cap space to actually at least pursue a player, I think that's something that they're definitely going to try and do and go after. And rather than try to spend on, this offseason where there aren't as many names right now. Anthony Davis would be the biggest name, but he's already reportedly expected to re-up with the Lakers long term. And so I think you're going to see a lot of teams, a lot of players opt, hey, I'm going to bet on myself for that 1 year, see if I can get a bigger contract, but also at least give some of these teams an opportunity to pursue those big fishes next year.
Going to be a very interesting free agency this year for the NBA and kind of seeing how the landscape of the league's going to look going into next season. But with that being said, we're going to take our last commercial break on the show today, and we're going to come back, and Chico's just going to give some general thoughts on the NBA draft coming up in November. So stay right here. Be right back here on the Ballin and Six podcast and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity. Offering a unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team, they connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in May of 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently providing a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where drinks and live music come together to make a perfect evening. For more than 15 years, they have provided not only for their dedicated locals, but their customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and great live entertainment. Open daily 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner and till 2 a.m. for drinks. Check out their new menu and book reservations on their website at Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, it's with an E at the end, .com, or call 905-371-2323 for reservations as well. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Alright guys, welcome back to the final segment of our Ballin' in a Six podcast right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network. Brandon Caputo and Chicco Nacion from the Scores Basketball Division back with you here. And this segment is brought to you by J&L Flooring, a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. Simplified processes and making homes beautiful are their specialties. 905-358-3299 or JNLflooring.com to start today. Chico, let's take a look at the NBA draft coming up. It's scheduled for Wednesday, November 18th. I assume it's going to not be a live draft in what we saw from the from the NFL and the NHL as far as a Zoom and conference call type of draft.
Yeah, with the NBA, obviously, it's not going to be in person. All of it's kind of be virtual. So I assume they're still planning out the logistics as to how that's going to work, but they're going to obviously do that virtually. It's not going to be in person, but in the meantime, players and teams have actually been able to just start bringing some of the players in for in-person medical evaluations and workouts, and that's kind of been pretty huge just because for months all they've had is just virtual Zoom interviews with these players. So to actually kind of see these people in person, have some updated measurements. I mean, it's crazy to think but in months, guys can grow. Their wingspan could be larger. They have to look at all these things because all of those little details goes into kind of your process of your draft selection, and also the workouts. Being able to kind of see what kind of shape these guys are in, because we don't know what the turnaround is going to be in terms of regular season. There's been talks about it in January. It could be further back if they want to, depending on if they want to try to hold out hope for fans to be able to enter games. But having those two things is incredibly important right now because all they're going off of is virtual interviews and game tape that is probably 6-7 months old, and it's kind of hard to tell and make an evaluation when you haven't been able to see these players, in some cases mostly in person at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. We talk about that in a lot of draftees in a lot of leagues like the NFL, the NHL. A lot of these guys, we haven't seen tape on them in, feels like almost a year at this point. So that's definitely a great point you bring up about that. Going off of the NBA draft as well, Chico, just your thoughts on what we might expect from the top five. Maybe we see some movement up there. We know the Minnesota Timberwolves have the number one overall pick. The Golden State Warriors, I think, are very interesting at number two because of the fact that I think it was just an outlier year with all their injuries and losing Kevin Durant, obviously. didn't help, but this is a very solid team going forward, and a team that is going to be back in the playoffs in the Western Conference. And if they decide to take the number 2 overall pick, they're going to get a very nice player. But you could also see them trading down and getting some more assets, or getting a player that could help them now for their playoff run. What do you think of Golden State at number 2? Like I just mentioned, kind of being an outlier team, a usual playoff team, just decimated with injuries this year, and looks to be on the way back this next season. What do you think they might do with this pick at number 2?
Yeah, I think they're definitely exploring trading it. I think they're probably, it's tough this year because there really isn't a consensus number 1. Although you could argue LaMelo Ball has the highest upside. You could argue Ball, Anthony Edwards from Georgia, James Wiseman from Memphis. Either one of those 3 are worthy of being the number 1 pick, and everything is kind of all over the place. And so I definitely see the Warriors trying to shop that, because there are a lot of teams that would like to try to get their hands on one of the guys. The New York Knicks are probably a prime example. Team that really didn't fare well in the draft lottery and would like to secure their point guard of the future, and they haven't really had a good point guard in a long time in New York. And so I think that's a guy that they would potentially eye if they can get their hands on the number 2 pick. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for the Warriors if they get James Wiseman there at number 2. I think he kind of makes perfect sense. I've always felt that. A tall, big center that they need, lots of two-way potential, and can kind of grow with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. And he wouldn't be under pressure to, I guess, kind of be a focal point of that offense, but I think he could bring a lot of the things in terms of being a rim-running big and a nice rim protector for them, and fit an immediate hole for that club. But they could also look to trade that pick in terms of getting more immediate help. It's not that their core is really that old right now, but I think they would prefer a guy who can jump in, someone that's proven, that can help them in that win-now situation. And that number 2 pick could be quite the trade chip for them to use to get that player.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, you don't think LaMelo Ball is a slam dunk to be the number 1 overall pick. You kind of think there's kind of a 2-3 option there, and the draft's going to kind of have a domino effect with that. Do you think that might make it more exciting this year, the fact that we don't have a clear-cut number 1, and it really could have a domino effect on the entire draft depending on which one of the 3 guys is taken?
Yeah, it's definitely fascinating. I mean, like you said, because of that uncertainty, and guys also, teams that want to kind of jockey other players to get someone they might value higher than other people. It's going to be a draft that's going to be unlike any other, and I do expect a lot of trade action to happen. Even for Minnesota's case, like even selecting either one of those guards isn't ideal for them, because I mean, you got D'Angelo Russell there already starting at the point, and then selecting Wiseman, another center. He won't be really able to play or be a natural fit alongside Karl Anthony Towns, so it's hard for me to see that happening. And so with a team like that also kind of feels the pressure to win. I mean, they acquired D'Angelo Russell because he's a good friend of Karl Anthony Towns, so they're going to be under pressure to win, and maybe they use that number 1 overall pick to trade down, get maybe another rotational player right now, and while also getting another pick. And so, yeah, the uncertainty at the top, I think, is definitely going to ignite a lot of trade action and talks. And like we said with the scouting process, I think because teams haven't been able to see these players in person in a while, like one team could have a guy on their board and probably see them as a top 5 pick, and another team in that same range could probably value them less and see them towards the end of the lottery.
Mm-hmm. So there might be a lot of movement than what we would usually expect in the NBA draft this year, which could be exciting. The fact that it's going to be virtual and it's going to be a different draft experience, so maybe some movement would keep the eyes on it and have some more intrigue. So really looking forward to that. But before we wrap up the show today, Chico, we are the Ballin' in the Six podcast, and I know you do talk a lot about the Toronto Raptors when you do your hits on different radio stations and talking about them on thescore.com as well. But they pick at number 29. obviously you can't give me a name of who they're going to take at that spot, but what type of player are you looking for the Raptors to take with the 29th overall pick? Obviously, they're not picking very high, but what kind of need do you think the Raptors need to address here with that pick, and what kind of player would you be looking for? Not necessarily who, but what type of skill set are you looking for the Raptors to go after with their first round pick?
I think they're going to be targeting either a big man at the center spot, just because they have Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka entering free agency, which would make I think Chris Boucher might be a restricted free agent, so they obviously don't really have a big man technically under contract. So I think that's definitely going to be a focus for them as well. And I think the point guard spot's going to be something you have to look at too. Kyle Lowry is getting up there in age, and he is entering the final year of his deal. Not to say that he's being traded or that he won't be brought back, but they might have to consider having another point guard to their roster. And Fred VanVleet is obviously entering free agency. He's going to have tons of offers from teams that do have cap space, but it is expected that Toronto will re-sign him, and I wouldn't be shocked by that. But I think a point guard is someone that they would definitely look into and highly consider. Kind of depends who's available at that option. But the Raptors, for one thing, they've always kind of valued versatility. So if there's a guy that can defend multiple positions, that's athletic and that's long, you've seen them take guys like that in the past, like Pascal Siakam, a late first-round pick who was kind of seen as just kind of going to be this high-energy player that could run the floor in transition, but he's obviously turned out to be much more than that. But the length that he has there, you're looking for guys of that type of specimen. And I guess the same thing you can say with OG Anunoby as well. If the Raptors value one thing, it's kind of length and versatility and size. And so those are the two positions that I think they would target with that pick. And they would kind of look for those type of skill sets as well.
Okay, and you just mentioned his name, so it popped up in my head here. Before we wrap up, your thoughts on Marc Gasol going back to Europe. What are your thoughts on him kind of ending off his NBA career, going off into the sunset here, and kind of leaving the NBA as a whole?
It's actually not official yet for Gasol going back to Europe. It was reported out there, but the team that was interested in signing him had actually said that it's not official, but that is something that they are going to pursue. And so it would be interesting to see if Gasol does decide to go back home and kind of finish his career there. I think that kind of be a fitting ending for him, seeing that, he got his ring. He had so much success in the NBA. It was, at some points probably one of the top 2 or 3 big men in the league. And for him to kind of go home, go off in the sunset with where his family is and everything. And, his brother is already overseas there as well. I think it would be a nice way for them to go out, and it also kind of gives them some time to kind of prepare for the Olympics as well. So being close to home, I assume training camp for Spain's basketball team would be somewhat easier for them if they were actually in Spain, and so that would be a nice way for him to go out. And I think Raptor fans will always treasure what he brought to this team, especially during that championship run, where, you got to see and really appreciate Marc Gasol for not only his defense, but just his basketball IQ, the way he's able to read plays and his playmaking that he brought to this team. I don't really think the Raptors have really ever had that from a guy, especially at the center position. So to be able to watch him these past couple of years in Toronto and kind of see him get that ring that he's been pursuing for so long, it's pretty satisfying to watch.
It was a great story to see him finally get that ring after all those years in Memphis, going to the Raptors and able to get it done there. It was one of the good stories of that NBA Finals was Marc Gasol finally getting an NBA championship after a well-deserved solid career in the NBA. But with that being said, folks, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Ballin in the Six podcast right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. This is your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the Niagara region. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the Ballin in the Six podcast, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter, ekpoots13 with a Canadian Z. As well, you can follow my co-host, Chicco Nacion, at Chico_N. Chico, thanks again so much for coming on. Hopefully we can have you back on for just before the NBA draft. I know it's going to be a busy time for you. That's your bread and butter there at thescore.com, and you doing a bunch of articles and interviews as well. So we appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we have you back on for some pre-draft analysis.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Again, you can follow him at Chico_N and check out his articles at thescore.com. Some great stuff going on there. And again, a big thank you to all of our great sponsors who help put us on and support the network, keeping the show on the air. Make sure you're checking them out and tell them the Armchair GM sent you. Make sure you're using those promo codes and supporting your local businesses during this time. It's very important. And you viewers out there for tuning in and listening along with us for this episode. And once again, this has been the Ballin in the Six podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network by sports fans for sports fans. We'll see you guys next episode.